Welcome, Sandie, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Defacing God, this first album, The Resurrection of Lilith, and more things relating to the metal world. And starting with a common question, how have you been during these crazy times? Because we started a pandemic 2 years ago, now a war in Europe, but the band takes the opportunity to compose and record the first album. So how has been this experience to work in the pandemic, now on war, and release a new album now?
Well, yeah, I mean, this whole thing has really been a process, especially during this whole lockdown and the pandemic. I mean, we had the album finished yeah, I don't even remember when we finished these tracks actually, but the whole process just turned out to be really long because, yeah, we had the pandemic and we couldn't release the album in the middle of the pandemic because it makes absolutely no sense to release an album when you cannot support it with any tours or shows, so to say. But I'm really just happy that we are on the other side now.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, this is the first album from Defacing God. That's a great thing. That's a great thing. We did the review on Metallarium, and Metallarium we put a 9/10. It was a great score there. So for you, how this album was composed during the pandemic, or perhaps was it before? Because the pandemic, many artists during this pandemic approached the opportunity to record, to create music. So explain everything about this release of this new album, because this is the first album, the band is new now.
Yeah, I mean, we started to work on this album already back in 2017 or 16 even, but yeah, because of the pandemic, I got a lot of new ideas, because we had this extra time. So I got this idea that I actually wanted to put an extra layer to our sound, so we started to work a lot with the symphonic parts. So in that aspect, the pandemic did well to us, because we had this extra time to deconstruct all the songs and be extra creative, so to say. Um, but yeah, the process until now has been extremely long. I mean, and now it's released on this Friday, and I cannot believe how many years that this actually took. So yeah, back to your question. This was a really long process. I mean, because of the pandemic, we got this extra time, to deconstruct the whole setup and the whole album. So yeah, we started to experiment a lot with this extra aspect of the music because we like this whole cinematic part, So that's why I wanted to drag in this extra layer of details, so to say. But yeah, we started the songs back in 2017, and we were done like in the end of 2021, so to say. So it was really like a long process, but I'm just happy to see the end of it now.
Great. And yes, when I hear for the first time this Defacing God, you have a lot of influence there, especially talking about the styles. Because you have symphonic parts, you have melodic death metal, you have black metal, you have a lot of things. So into this matter, how do you define the exact music for this resection of the little of Lilith? Because it's very difficult from reviewer to say this is a symphonic melodic death black metal style, because it's very long, very long label. But for you, what is exactly Jack for this resurrection of Lilith?
Um, I mean, when it comes to our sound and when it comes to the label of the music, like I normally, if you want to label us, yes, we play this melodic death metal, like the traditional Swedish Scandinavian metal, so to say. And we are really aware that it is not a new genre. I mean, we didn't invent the genre. It's an old and, yeah, a really beloved genre all around the world, so to say. And yeah, it was never the intention to create a new genre in that way, but it was always my intention to put my own personal twist to it. I never intended to just follow like a strict recipe in one direction, because I really like, as an artist, to be creative. I mean, that is the essence of being an artist, that you are allowed to be completely free in what you're doing. So that's why I like to experiment with a lot of these styles. But I mean, if you want to put a name to it, yes, it's melodic death metal, very darkened, with a very dark vibe, of course. But you can still say it's melodic death metal. But yeah, I just really try to personalize it, with the switching between a little bit inspiration from the black metal scene, and I even like to put in these classical aspects of it through this orchestration part, so to say. So yeah, that's my way of making it personal, so to say.
Yes, yes. Well, this album has a lot of influence, as you said, from the Swedish and Norway scene, especially into the black and into the death metal. But when we talk about, you have influence a little from Rotting Christ in two songs. You have a lot of influence from Rotting Christ, and you have influence from Cradle of Filth and Ekatres and Tron, because it's a very common thing. It's an amazing thing to see Cradle of Filth, Rotting Christ, Swedish metals, black metal. It's a lot of things. That's a way thing to see this music. So that's why I love this new album. So for you, to this matter, and the aspect that I try to relate in this question, your music is very difficult to hear just one song. It's obviously because it's a whole concept.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But with the new generation, the digital platforms, they love to do, especially talking about people for 25 or 20 years old, they love to do their playlist with one song from an album. So this is a difficult question. If we try to relate this concept, the new era for the new people, so which songs capture whole essence from this resurrection of the Lilith, or especially for the new generation?
Which song from the album, you mean?
Yes, yes, from the album.
Yeah. I would go with Rise of the Trinity then. I mean, I love all the songs on this album, and every song means something personal to me because I put a lot of effort in each song, of course. But I would say Rise of the Trinity is really a good example on what we want to sound like, because it has a little bit of everything that I like. It has the dark vibes through the symphonic parts without being too much, because it's really a balance, to keep the groove but still use all these symphonic parts. I mean, some people tend to overdo this symphonic, so it takes all the focus away from the guitars, so to say. But I love the guitars, so that's why I try to find this balance between it, that there's both the dark atmospheric symphonic parts, but you also really hear the guitars, and you hear the blast beats, and you hear the grooves. That song just has everything that I like. So I think if I had to introduce Defacing God to someone who didn't know who we were, I would use that song, yeah, because it has everything of what I like.
Mm-hmm. Okay. When you create the band with Michael Olson, the drummer. So who was in charge to create the riffs, the riffs? You, or perhaps the new alienation, because you are the vocalist, or perhaps you play guitar, you play piano, and you create the parts. Share with the new guitarists, with the new members, and Michael Olson did the drums. So who was in part to change this completely? Well, to do this a lot of things into this music.
Yeah, I mean, there's me who is the vocalist, yeah, and I write all the lyrics, and I of course also have a lot of ideas when it comes to the music, especially the symphonic parts. But we have my two guitarists, and they are in charge of writing the riffs, of course. And that is also a reason why Defacing God experiment with so many different kinds of styles, so to say, because we are all very different in the band. My lead guitarist, he is very inspired by the Swedish death metal. He has played the guitar since '89, and he has always his style has always been more over in this melodic style. Where my other guitarist, he's more into old school death metal, so he's a little bit more brutalized and not so much into all the melodies. So my two guitarists, they meet up. Sometimes it's the rhythm guitarist who writes the riffs, and sometimes it's the other way around, my lead guitarist, and sometimes they simply just meet in the middle. So that is also the beauty of this whole art thing, that we are five different kinds of people and we have different styles, but we meet in the middle and we just throw in all our interests, and all our styles, and then out of that there comes something, and that is the sound of Defacing God. So that is also why you see this whole experimenting, like, yeah, with all the different styles, because we are very different in the band. Me and the drummer, we are a little bit more or less the same style. We for example, like bands like Rotting Christ. We like bands like Nile. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Marduk, for example. So that is my inspiration. But my guitarists, they are completely inspired by completely different bands, or music, whatever, you know. So that's why we try to balance the whole thing, and that is the way that the sound um, got the way that it is and the way that you hear it nowadays, so to say. Yeah.
Okay,
But they
okay.
create the riffs. My drummer composed the drums, of course, and I have a lot of ideas because I do not play any instruments in the bands, but I have a lot of ideas, and I when my guitarists they come up with the riffs, then I come in and I come with my inspiration, and I tell I want this part a little bit darker. I would like if you do like this instead, and maybe if we put out this part and we do like this instead, you know. So yeah, we all have a saying in the band, so to say.
Okay, okay. Well, other aspects that, especially from the title, is the name of Lilith, because Lilith is like a common word into the metal world. A lot of bands use Lilith, the Creative Field use Lilith, so Ghost use Lilith, Battery use Lilith, Reflections, so a lot of things. So in this time, what is it for you? What is the exactly meaning that Lilith has for the band? Because Creative Field has this or their opinion, or Danny Field has his opinion, the other band has opinion. But what is the point of view of Lilith for Defacing God?
Yeah, there is a lot to that, and it's funny you mentioned Cradle of Filth, because I actually hear a lot of people who say that our music sounds a little bit like Cradle of Filth. But the funny thing is, I think I know 2 songs with Cradle of Filth, so I never like explicitly searched my inspiration there, because it's really not a band that I followed that much. You know, I just heard from people that he makes great lyrics. For example, he's a brilliant writer. For example. But me, I actually don't know many songs, so I didn't even know that he also uses Lilith. But yeah, what Lilith means to me, and the reason that I use Lilith in all my themes and all my topics, you know, is because for me she's the ultimate strong female voice, so to say. Because Lilith is not a new thing; she's always been out there, and she's probably the most common and well-known female demon in mythology, folklore, religion, whatever, you know. But that is also why it was so appealing to me to actually use her, because I'm a woman myself, and there is a lot of things in the past that speaks to me. For example, I'm really interested in all the history about the witch hunt, especially in Europe. You know, all these past things that happened in ancient times to women, and many of the things that happened back then, and the way that we viewed women back in the days. You can draw so many parallels to the present world, because there's still many places in the world where you see all these things. So this whole idea about using Lilith and naming the album The Resurrection of Lilith is sending out a message that now Lilith comes back. You know, she wants to be that voice for all these women who never got any. You know, she want to tell us about these she want to tell about these stories that we are absolutely not done talking about, you know, because there's so many things happening in the world nowadays as well. And who is better to put a face to that than Lilith? Because for me, she stands for ultimate feminine power, you know. Because the story that I am inspired by, especially because there's thousands of stories about Lilith out there, the story that appeals most to me is the story that she was the first woman created even before Eve. But she left paradise because she didn't want to obey Adam. She wanted to have a saying, and she wanted to live on her own terms. So she just left paradise back then, you know, and then she was cursed, and yeah, a lot of things happened to her because she wanted to stay true to herself. So that story is so appealing to me, because you can draw parallels to so many of the things that happened in the past, and also many of the things that happens nowadays, you know. So that is why I used her. And especially through the album, I also mention a few other women and a few other female demons like Jezebel and Abuso, for example. And that is part 1, 2, and 3. And that is more or less like that I come back, or Lilith comes back. She also invoked these 2 other demons because she wants to send out a message that we're stronger together, you know. And the more we stand together, the louder our voice will be, so to say. So that is the whole idea of this theme, because I have so many things that I want to say, and I like to express it through the music. I mean, I couldn't find a better way to do it, actually.
Yes, yes. As you say, your album is very honest, very honest. When for the first time when I saw the cover art, I see Lilith in, I think it's Lilith into there, and a lot of scratches, a lot of people with crosses into there. So what is exactly, well, I tried to resurrection of Lilith, the name, but what is the exactly meaning of the cover art? Because it's very difficult to relate the resurrection, but in the cover art, you see a lot of people start scratching a Lilith. So there, so what is the connection into the name and the Lilith part?
Yeah, I mean, the way you see the cover art, I mean, I love the cover art, and it's made by Peter Salai from Paint Graphics, and he is actually the one who came up with this visual idea, so to say, because what you see on the album cover art is this woman that she's held down, you know, by religious people, and they try to hold her down, and out of her chest you see this bloody hand coming out, and that is supposed to symbolize, you know, that this woman, she's held down, but now her inner Lilith comes out because now she's ready to rise, you know. So that is actually pretty simple what the artwork express in this whole thing, that it's a woman held down, but inside of her, her inner Lilith comes out, you know, ready to rise and take over and live that life on her own terms, so to say. And I
Mm.
think it was a pretty cool idea. I mean, it's not too. I mean, it's actually pretty simple, you know. So, but even though it's pretty simple, I mean, the picture just talks to me, you know. So I'm really
Yeah.
satisfied with it because I actually think it fits very good to this whole album. I mean, it's the whole album pressed down to one picture, so to say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm the accord with you because when I saw the cover art, I saw whole sounded for the band. A lot of influence, a lot of there is a lot. It's a great cover art for a year start the band. So, well, we are very close to in this interview with this interview, Sandie. And what are the future plans that the band has for this, the resurrection of Lilith? Perhaps more upcoming tours in Europe, in US, or who knows in the coming future, Latin America. Who knows? Videos, etc., etc.
I hope so. I mean, right now we are in a process of landing a new deal with a new booking agency and a management agency, actually, and they have a lot of plans for us. And our plan is, of course, also to tour and also support the album with a lot of shows. But for now, it is very hard to actually go on a tour because all the spots, all the tour spots are already taken, you know, but because there's hundreds of bands who just want to get out there right now. And there are many of the bigger bands who are making a living of this, you know, they have waited for years to come out. So it is a little bit too late to go on tour now because the summer festivals are almost over, you know. Um, but the plan is definitely we are playing some shows to support this album, and then the beginning of next year we're starting out with a tour in Europe. But the plan is definitely also to come overseas, you know. So my plan is to spread the music across the world, you know. But we have to take it step by step because there's still a little bit of a way before we are back to normal, so to say, after the pandemic.
Mhm.
So, but we will be there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as I said in the first question, we will talk about other matters. And one aspect that I didn't note during these five or 6 years is that the Denmark has a very good bands nowadays. You, Jotun, Beast, and a lot of these so one common. So now, how is the movement now in Denmark with a lot of crazy bands?
Actually, it's a question that is very hard for me to answer because, to be honest, I am so busy with my own stuff, you know, with my own music that I'm not really busy about what happens out there in the scene. And I guess it is actually like that for many musicians nowadays, that especially when you're making your own music, I mean, you're so busy with your own, so you don't have time to keep an eye on other bands, so to say. So I actually don't have much of an idea. I just know that we are on really on a roll, you know, with good bands. I mean, we have many great artists here, and we also have a few bands here from Denmark who signed with bigger labels out there who absolutely deserves it, you know. But in general, I don't know so much about of what is going on out there. But that is simply because I have been so busy with my own. So I simply don't have the time to keep an eye on others, so to say.
Okay, okay. And what is your opinion about, bueno, when I saw the first time Defacing God, I just imagine a band from with members. But when I hear your voice, you are female. And a special thing according to this is the according to the market, to the marketing, to the publicity, that the publicity use a female fronted as the main character of the band. Do you think it's necessary to talk about Defacing God as a female fronted band, or just a symphonic melodic death black metal?
Yeah, that is actually a discussion that has been up so many times, like about this whole uh, gender discussion about the music. And if you ask me, I mean, it is really not important for me if it's a man or a woman in front. So I actually think it's a little bit a shame to label it as female fronted metal, because in the end it really shouldn't matter if it's a man or a woman. I mean, we're all just humans, so who gives a fuck if you're a man or a woman?
Yeah, yeah,
But um, I mean, if you look at the topic that all the stories that I write, and the theme that I base my music and all my artistic expression on, then of course it's actually important that I'm a woman, because I take up a lot of these themes seen from a woman's point of view. So of course it's important for me that people know that I'm a woman, but I think that it's pretty obvious. But yeah, it is just important for me that people know that I can only speak for myself, or for a woman's point of view, because I'm a woman myself. But in general, the music should not be defined by if you are a man or a woman, because it really doesn't matter, so to say.
yeah,
I get that it's interesting for many people when they see a metal band with a woman in front, because it is just a little bit more rare, to see a woman. I mean, there's many more women in front nowadays, and in the metal industry, than there were like 15 years ago,
yeah.
so to say. But it's still mostly men, you see. So I of course get when people see a band and it's a woman in front who screams like that they get like this wow, interested, like wow, it's a woman, because it's a little bit more non-typical. But in the end of the day, doesn't matter if it's a man or woman, and I wouldn't label myself as female fronted metal. I mean, my topic is about women, so yeah, it is important when it comes to that. But if you zoom out and look on the music shouldn't be defined from it. I mean, people should not be more interested in your band just because you are a woman. People should be interested in your music because they like your music, because they like the sound of it, and not because of your gender. Yeah,
Mm.
I hope it makes sense.
Mhm. Okay. Well, Sandy, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about this resurrection. As I said, we put a good score here in Metalerium. Perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American, well, to your new Latin American fans and Metalerium followers.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely hope to see you soon, and seeing new grounds. I mean, I have never been in Latin America before, so I really look forward to the day when it comes, and I hope it will be very soon. But yeah, until then just take care, stay true to yourself, and yeah, stay metal. And yeah, I really hope to see everyone soon. And
Great.
thank you so much for having me as well.